sort of song or help them build a business, whatever it is that you help them do, what is your step-by-step process? Okay, you don't have to have paragraphs for this, but could you turn it into steps? Step one, step two. How many steps are there? Like a number. What is your step-by-step process? That is the second question. How many steps are there? So first start mapping out, well, first I take them to do this, and then I take them through this process. It's important to learn how to do this. Like just, you probably already know this, but if you haven't already, outline all the steps in your process, high level, and then count them. How many? So you need to know, I have a 6-step process, I have a 7-step process, I have a 19-step process. Numbers are really important, especially when you know how many they are. It sounds concrete. Next question, what order are they in? And if you don't have steps, create them. People crave a linear path. And that's what you need to give them. So a lot of my students know how to get results for somebody. They know what they want to teach them, but it's all this stuff. Your job is to package it in a way that looks like a step-by-step linear numbered path. It makes you so much more appealing. If you just look at the personal finance space, for example, you've got a bajillion personal finance authors and coaches and radio show hosts, but probably the all-time most successful is Dave Ramsey. And there's a lot of reasons why he's successful. He's a great salesman. He's a very polarizing figure and a big personality. There's a lot you can learn from the way he does content, whether you agree with him or not. It's irrelevant. But I think the number one thing that makes his stuff successful is his baby steps. He has a 7-step process that he's been teaching for 30 years. It hasn't changed. It's 7 steps. Now, there's a lot of things he talks about and teaches on, but he's boiled down his method into 7 linear steps, and they're numbered. Baby step 1, save $1,000. Baby step 2, pay off all your consumer debt using the debt snowball. Baby step 3, build out a full emergency fund in 3 to 6 months. Baby step 4, start investing in 15% more in retirement. He has a 7-step process, and people self-identify where they are on that 7-step journey. Oh, I'm on baby step 3. Oh, congrats, I just got to baby step 4. He's took the complicated, massive, never-ending, always expanding topic of managing your money and boiled it down to a simple, linear 7-step process, which gives people peace. He's a master at this, and this is why I think he's so successful. And he references his 7 steps in everything he does. public speaking, radio, interview on Fox News, all of his books, doesn't matter. The 7 steps. So you need to create your own steps. How many steps are there? What are the order? What's the number? If you don't have them, create them. Create your own method. And if you're really, really juicy, give your method a name. Okay, element 5 of the mentor map is the remaining questions. Okay? So after you've gone through your step-by-step process, what remaining questions will they have? So you've already mapped out, here's the steps. If they do it, they'll be successful. But you know they're going to have ongoing questions, like gaps, like, well, what about this? Or what about in this scenario? Can you anticipate what are those remaining questions they're going to have after having gone through your step-by-step process? Next question. What nuances are not covered in your core steps? What nuances are not covered? So, for example, in Dave Ramsey's baby steps, he doesn't cover how to buy a car in his 7 baby steps. It's kind of assumed he's anti-debt, but he has to address some of these nuanced questions. Okay, here's the method to pay cash for your car when you don't have a lot of money. Here's the best way to do it. Here's the extra thing. You should pay cash. You shouldn't use a loan or whatever it is. That's a very specific question. It's not really in the 7-step process, but it's going to come up. What about, my dad wants me to co-sign on a loan with him. Or what about financial generosity? Or what about whatever? Like, there's all kinds of stuff. What about life insurance? Like, that's not covered in the 7 steps, but it's a nuanced question that's not covered in the core steps. I'm sure you do have some nuanced questions that are covered in these core steps. I'm going to give you my example from my book here in a minute. And then finally, the remaining questions section, what holes need to be filled to round out their education? Right? They could go through the 7-step process or the 12-step process or the 5-step process. You're going to cover some nuanced questions, and that's going to get them results. But there's probably some holes that if they were the ideal student and they were chomping at the bit to buy all your stuff and learn everything, what other holes would you want to plug and what other things would you want to address with them that would really make them a superstar student and give them ultimate success to round out their education, so to speak? And final 6th step of the mentor map is what we call the call to action. So here's 4 questions you want to answer in this regarding to your whole business. What is the next step for them after going through your process? So if that process is coaching, what's the next step? If that process is your course, what's the next step after the course? If you have a book, you read the book, what's the next step? Like, once they've gone through your steps, what then? What else should they be doing? What's the next thing? Number 2 is, how can you reduce overwhelm? You know, the more they dive into this stuff with you, even if they're getting results, more questions are going to come up, and more anxiety is going to come up, and they're going to get overwhelmed when they realize how deep the rabbit hole goes. So how could you help reduce their overwhelm? Can you paint a picture of the next 30 days for them? The next 90 days, the next 6 months? What could or what should that next period of time after going through your process look like? And then here's an important question to answer for yourself. How can you put the responsibility of transformation on them instead of on you? You're teeing them up. You're giving them the framework, the method, the steps, obviously the content. You've created it. You've taken all your years of expertise and experience and you've laid it out there. How can you, with language or even the way you teach or show up, shift that responsibility of transformation away from you? So it's up to you. supposed to make free videos and content? How am I supposed to sell content if I'm giving it away for free? Or, I'm all of this stuff. Is it going to cost money? How much is it going to cost? I already have a job. I'm busy. I'm hitting all those objections in the first 2 chapters for 2 reasons. One, to show them, hey, I feel you, like, to be relatable, to be empathetic, so they feel heard and understood. And then 2, to obliterate those objections, so they feel like, okay, maybe that's not really legit objections. And now they're warmed and they're primed. And so in chapter 2, I give them the map, which is like, before I dive into the nitty gritty, I'm like, here's where this goes.
This machine is a Tandy Pro, the Tandy Pro Cowboy Outlaw. It's a crank driven machine. That way you can go through quite a few layers of thick leather without any problems, and you can go at your own speed. Okay. I'm going to trim up these threads. I do it from the inside, that way you can't see where the thread is melted. I'll show you how I do that. Pull both strings through on the inside, cut them. And I take my lighter and I melt those two, melt them down. It makes a bead so the thread won't come back out. And I go around and do that to all of them. Then I take the hammer and on the back side I flatten out the stitches so they lock in and they set right inside that groove that I cut. If you don't do this part, you can have little wrinkles and buckles in your leather, and the thread won't sit down inside that groove very nice. So you gotta tap them in a little bit. So that's ready. It's going to be an inside the waistband. There's a cutout here for a red dot, but this loop is going to go here on the front. This is for an outside the waistband. This is the back side and that's the front side. So I melt one, I get one melted, and then the other one I pull tight so there's no slack on the outside. I pull it tight and I hold it with my finger while I melt the inside and make a bead so it's not coming out. You would have a hard time pulling that string out if you were trying to. Trust me, I've tried many of them, rebuilding them and fixing things. You got to pull the stitching out. This is an acrylic edge coat, and you put it on the very edge of your leather. That way it makes it look sharp, makes it look nice and finished, and it protects the edge of it so the water doesn't get in, and it makes it nice and smooth so there aren't any snags, anything that would make it rough feeling. Just got to be careful not to get it anywhere that you don't want it, because it's really hard to get off if you can get it off. So you get it somewhere where it doesn't belong, and usually it's there. You either got to start all over or deal with it. And so far I've gotten, a couple of hours into these holsters, and to start over even with just one piece, it's a pretty major setback. So you got to be really, really careful, watch what you're doing, and pay attention. You can't have any on your gloves, nothing on your fingers when you go to handle it. If you do see something, you got to wipe it off right away. So for now, I'm only edge coating the edges that I've stitched. This edge is going to be, it's finished. When I go to put the holster together, this edge is finished. So I'm not going to be bending it and doing anything else to it. So I'm going to go ahead and edge coat it, finish it up. The outside edge here, I'm not going to edge coat, because I'm going to glue it together with the other piece and stitch it, and then I'm going to edge coat it after it's all done. This is going to be a belt. It's a double thick hand tooled belt, extra large. I've got a tape measure across the front of my workbench here so I can measure my belts a lot easier. So I go with halfway in between the hole for the buckle, and then I measure all the way out to 38 to 44 inches. So 38 would be the smallest and 44 would be the biggest hole. Mark the holes. Then from the last hole, I go 2.5 inches to the end of the belt. So right here, it's going to be where I cut it off. I'm not going to put the end on it until after I sand it nice and straight, so that when I go to put the stencil on for the end, both sides are even and it's not going to be crooked. So I'm just going to kind of cut it off close to where I marked it. And I need another piece. These are 7 to 9 ounce thick tooling leather, so it's pretty heavy duty. So this is going to be the outside piece, and this is going to be the inside piece. Cut this straight. That's going to sit. There's the 2 holes for the Chicago screws, so this piece is going to cover both of those holes and just stop at the beginning of that notch. So the next step on those is to glue them together. I put glue on both sides and then put it together. But I can't do that right now because I'm running low on glue, and I should have some more in the next day. Maybe today or tomorrow it should be showing up. That way I can get this going on the next step. I'm just going to take a pen and mark on the inside here what size it is, just for me, so that I know later on when I pick it up what I'm doing with it. I'll go over here and check my orders on my website real quick, because I need to verify something. This is my laptop set up out here in my workshop. Okay. So I thought this order's already done. And take that out of there. Foul that. The next belt I got lined up is a large 35 to 41 inch. It's double thick, so there's 2 layers of 7 to 9 ounce leather on it. And the punch I'm using for my Chicago screws is a 3/16 leather punch. That's the standard size of Chicago screw. This is the punch I use to make the slot for the buckle. So the post will go through the slot, and this is 1.5 inch leather punch. And this is large. And up here on my chart I've got large is 35 to 41 inches. And I always give them a few inches small and a few inches long for adjustment. Just in case they, if you carry inside the waistband, you're going to have to go a little bit large on your belt. I usually like 2 to 3 inches. So that's what I give them automatically, is a couple inches to account for carrying a firearm. So if you order a large 35 to 41, what you're going to get is a 33 to 43. And I just marked the center of each hole so I know where to start and stop when I punch the holes. I don't actually mark the hole until it's sanded smooth on both sides, so it's right in the center. If I do it now, it could be off center by the time I get it sanded down. Next up, I've got an order for an M&P shield outside the waistband, standard retention. But next thing that needs to be done with that is I need to put the outside piece on. It helps strengthen the pocket, keep the pocket open when your gun is drawn, and it makes it a whole lot easier to reholster. So that goes on there. So I'm going to mark on here where this goes so that I can glue it and know where I need to glue. So I'll just use an awl and mark that real lightly. I don't want to make a deep scratch on it, just enough so I know where to put the glue. And the glue I'm using is a Barge cement. It's a contact cement. It's really strong. Like, you have a really hard time pulling the leather apart after it's glued. That strong. You don't need very much to do something like that. You let that dry for a little bit and then put it together, and use a mallet to set it. And put these away. So I got to get the M&P shield molding drone out and get the M&P shield pattern, if I've got an updated pattern, so I might not have to make a new one. Here's the molding drone for the M&P shield. That's the 9mm 40 caliber. So I'll get my folder out for the pattern. That's the Shield EZ. I might have to make, okay, that's the M&P full size. I might have to make a pattern. I don't do a whole lot of the M&P shields anymore. I used to do a lot of them. Yeah, I'll just make a pattern. And that's good because it's always good to, the more patterns you make, the better you get at making patterns. So it's never a bad thing. Okay, I set that right in my line that I scratched. The mallet, it's a contact cement, so you gotta pound it together. And once you pound it together and it dries, it's really hard to get back apart. So you make sure you put it in the right spot. The next step, I'm going to let this dry for a little bit, but the next step is to stitch it. I'm going to stitch it so it all looks, it's going to look like that. And put this over by my sewing machine. This is a belt loop for an inside the So I put a tan coat on the inside. It's a really strong water repellent sealant. So now I'm gonna finish the outside. I'm gonna put, it's acrylic Resolene I'm gonna put on the outside. So I'm gonna fold these the way it's gonna look on the holster. This is the holster it's going on. So this loop's gonna go right here. So I'm going to fold them up before I put my Resolene on it. That way it helps it keep its shape. It's going to stay pretty much in that shape when it's dry. Just going to get a couple screws. Screw post on the back. Screw in the front. Just loose. It doesn't have to be tight. Just because I want the Resolene to get underneath that screw. This is my acrylic Resolene. I put it on with a sponge brush. Start on the back. Then I take a paper towel and kind of absorb any pooling, any of it that's starting to pool up, or you don't want it to get too thick. So when you buy one of my holsters, you just put it on, you wear it. You don't realize how much time and attention's going into it to make a really nice quality holster. So get it, make sure I get it up underneath that screw. Dab off any globs anywhere it wants to pull up, and then I'm going to hang this up and let it dry. And I'm going to make a pattern for this M&P shield. Get stuff out of the way. And since it's going to be a right side, it's a right-handed M&P shield, so it's going to sit this way. So you want this side of the firearm facing up, so that when you go to cut it out, put it together, it's facing the right way. First thing I do is I trace, make sure it's nice and straight on the paper, trace the outline of it. There's a little piece of plastic that I put on the mold. When I go to form it, it'll make a little pocket on the inside for the retention, and that sits right there. So that's where my retention screw is going to go. When you tighten that down, it pushes on the trigger guard, making more retention for you. So I'm going to put that in there, trace around that. Okay. That's my stitch line. I've got a video, I think it's a one-part video where I make shows how to make a pattern. So I'm not going to go through every little step. If you want to see step by step how to make the patterns that I use, you can go back and look at my video list and pull up pattern making. But you want to avoid covering up the mag release, and then leave enough room here for your fingers so you can get a full firing grip before you draw the firearm. And then my belt loops start 1/2 inch down. They're 2-inch loops, and then I go another 1/2 inch to the bottom of the holster. Then I draw in where the belt's going to go. And then on the front side, I go about a 1/2 inch. I try to go 1/2 inch off the firearm for the first belt loop. It's a 1/2 inch wide, and then another 1/2 inch to the back end of the holster. And on the front side, I'll go 1/2 inch. Half inch wide, 1/2 inch to the end. So it looks like that. I'm going to draw the sweat guard, the sweat shield back here. Alright, I might as well make the edges round, round off the corners. Okay, that's pretty much what the basic shape is going to look like. This is the panel for the the back end. So now I've got to do the front end, which you have to put the gun back in its spot and wrap the paper around it and trace it in. With that I use my light table so I can see it better when I have the other paper on top. I'm going to mark this shield 9mm. This is the right for the right hand side. If you want to do a left hand holster, you just flip it over and use the other side. Set that aside for now so I can get to work on what I was working on. Take you over to my sewing machine. This is a Tandy Pro Cowboy Outlaw. It's a crank operated so that you can go through some really thick stuff. And I like that it doesn't have a motor because I can, if you get used to running a motor sewing machine, it's not an issue, but with a hand crank I can line up. I feel like I have more control. And if you need to go through really thick leather, you just pull harder on the handle. You don't got to worry about if your machine's going to make it through. What I'm doing is I'm following my stitching groove. I've got a tool that will cut a groove where you're going to put your stitches, and you follow that groove so that your stitches lay down inside that, and it's pretty much flat on the top. They don't stick out where they can get snagged on anything. I dropped my phone. Sorry about that. Then I'm going to double stitch it here on the end to lock the stitches in place. Okay. I'm done there. Take you back over here and show you what I do with the threads. Because now I got to finish the threads up. On the inside of it, I pull this the threads through and cut them. You don't want to do that on the outside, or it'll look bad. So you won't even be able to tell looking at it where your threads end. This one's locked in, so you can see it's not coming through. So I just cut it off really close and leave it. It's not coming out because what it did inside there. When the needle went through the thread that was already in there. So when it pulled out, it locked it in place. So now I'm going to melt it on the outside. And then on the inside, melt those down. And when you do that, when you melt it and smash it down, you make a bead that won't pull out. You know, you're making a bead on the inside, and it makes it so it doesn't come out. It's really hard to get them out. Okay, now I'm going to flip it over and tap it. What that does is it flattens everything out, flattens out the stitches, and makes them sit down inside that groove that I cut, so it's nice and flat. And when you're using a machine, it can put tiny little wrinkles, or like I would call them wrinkles, on the leather. So when you flip it over and you tap it down, it flattens everything back out. So you can't even tell that it was buckled or wrinkled. So the next step for this one is I got to glue the one side to the back. This is the back. So I'm going to glue this side here and then stitch it. This is barge cement. It's a contact cement, so it's really, really strong, and it's made for leather, shoe repair, and leather work, saddle work. It's a really, really strong glue. I'm going to glue all the way around the belt loop hole. Let that dry for just a minute. Okay. This piece that I cut out for the retention pocket in the next holster that I'm going to be making, I'm going to have to tape that right on there, so that when I mold it, I can hand mold the pocket in there with that. So I use I just use painter's tape. Probably want to take my gloves off for this, because painter's tape likes to stick right to that rubber. Okay. So that's ready to go. It looks like that. My belt loops are dry now. I have the acrylic Resolene on the outside and a tan coat. It's a sealant on the inside to make it a lot smoother when the belt goes in. It's a really smooth. So I'm going to take these bolts back out. And then I'm going to buff it a little bit. Take a rag, a nice clean rag, something really soft, and buff it a little bit just to give it some shine and smooth out that Resolene. There's a lot of steps that go into a good leather holster that when you buy it and you use it, you'll never know what went into it. So what I'm going to do is just kind of shine it up. There. So this is the next piece to go on. This is going to be an inside the waistband. It's going to be folded over like that. There's a cutout here for a red dot. That's how I think I'm going to go to that as a standard for all my holsters, because then the customer doesn't have to specify whether they want a red dot cutout or not. So this piece is going to get stitched on like that, and then when it's all put together, this is going to be bolted onto that piece. So I'm going to put my Chicago screws, the screw post, in here before I put it together. And got my screw post, punch them in through the back. I'm gonna put it on here and mark where it goes. It's basically a guideline for the glue, so I know where to put that. Okay. And this is ready. The glue on here is pretty much dry, so I'll put these two together by lining up the belt loop. Make sure the sides are nice and straight. My glue dried. Put a little bit more glue on there. Hate when that happens. Put more glue on here. Got to put this on both sides because it's a contact cement. The glue adheres to the leather, and then you put it together, and the glue adheres to itself. Okay, let's try this one again. Okay. Let that dry for a minute. Now this one's ready to go together. Line that up where it goes. My glue line, push it down, tap it together. Okay, now it's getting that ready to be stitched, and I've got my stitching line already cut into it. So I'm going to set that over by my sewing machine and let it dry for a minute before I stitch it. As this is glued together, it's dried pretty well. I'm going to have to take it over to the sander and sand all the edges nice and flat. And that's kind of loud, so I'm not sure if you're going to want to turn your volume down or whatever, but hopefully I can show you how that. Okay. All right. Got all my edges nice and squared. Now I'm going to bevel. When you sand it, you get like a sharp edge and a flap. The leather wants to flap over, so now you're going to have to cut that off, and they call it bevel it, and it'll give it a nice smooth rounded surface. So to bevel leather, it's best to wet it. So I've got my pot of water over here, and the water's warm. You want to at least have warm water when you're forming leather or working with leather. So I'm going to take a sponge and wet this down. Get it nice and wet. That way when you go to cut it, it's a nice smooth cut. And to cut it, you use a beveler. This is a leather edge beveler. It's a number 2. There's different sizes and different roundnesses to the cut, depending on what you're working on. So you just go around the edge and message, please. So you don't want any sharp edges on any holster. That way everything's round, everything's smooth. So for the user, it's a lot more comfortable. You're not going to have any sharp edges. So we cut that edge off the front, flip it over. Cut it off the back. So there's no sharp edges. Now the next step is to slick it. Without use, my battery's dying. I gotta plug my phone in. Sorry about that. My battery's low, so I just plugged it in. So I use one of these. It's a edge slicker, and it's made of wood. So when you rub it on a wet leather edge, it lays all the fibers down nice and smooth. You do it. You want to do it from the one side, the one edge, over to the front, and then on the opposite side, so you get it rounded. You don't want to have a flattened edge with a sharp edge, because that's what the whole reason for doing this is to make sure it's nice and smooth and flat, or rounded. Rounded edges, rounded edges. And when you get done, it should be really shiny, real glassy, because you've laid all the fibers down and made it really, I don't know if you can see, can't really see it very good, but trust me, it's shiny. And then when you go when it's all done, you go to edge coat it like what we did here. It's a black edge coat. It makes it even smoother and shinier, and it protects the edges from water, and it makes it look finished. It's all really nice and sharp looking. I've got a machine over there with a slicker wheel I made out of brass that you can run this on the wheel and smooth it down. If I've got a lot of holsters to do, I'll use the machine because it speeds it up, but if I don't, I just do it by hand. It doesn't really take that long. Okay, that's done. Now I got to get my, this is my stitching groover. I got the end taped up because it's kind of sharp and you don't want it scratching on anything that you don't want scratched. What this does is it cuts in my groove where I stitch it, and lets the stitches lay down inside of a groove and make some flat. So I don't know if you can see. I've got the width set. That's usually where I set it for holsters. It's almost about a 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go around and cut in my stitching line. Okay. Like that. And now now I'm going to paint that line because when I stitch it, I don't want anybody to see that raw leather underneath there. So I'm going to take a paintbrush and some leather dye and paint that. So the color I'm using is quarter man. It's the same color I used to airbrush the outside of it. So you get that nice fade look. I'm just going to put a little bit in the lid. You don't want to get this all over your fingers like I just did. You go to touch your holster and you're going to get leather dye where you don't want it. And then you got a ruined holster and you got to start all over. So I'm just going to take a regular paintbrush and just paint that line so it goes away. There. Now you can't see it. Now you gotta wait till that dries before you can stitch it because it's gonna stain your white stitching. So I'm gonna buff it out, help it dry, and get all the residual leather dye out of that groove, so that when I go to stitch it, my nice white stitching is still nice and white. Okay, now I'm gonna let that dry for a little bit, and probably go stitch this one up and stitch the other one up both together. I don't think there's anything I can do right now, so I'll go stitch them up. Take you over here to my sewing machine again. So I'm going to stitch the outside the waistband one up first and let the other one dry for a little bit. Didn't leave myself enough here to grab a hold of. You need to grab a hold of both strings for your first couple stitches and hold them up. There. I left my scissors over here. I'll show you these scissors I've got. I just got them in the sewing section of Walmart, and it's got a really nice sharp point so that I can get really close to the leather when I go to finish the stitches off. I can cut really close to the leather and get right inside the hole. Now I'm going to stitch this one. Something I just started doing is I'll start my stitch over here. That way when I go around and I end it, I double stitch over top to lock my threads in, and I'm going to do it over here where your belt goes in and pretty much covers it up. I used to do it right in here, which is still a good spot to do it, but it makes it obvious when you're wearing it where it's double stitched, and I do everything that I can to try to hide things like that, to make it that kind of throw off the consistency of the holster. So I'll start it right around in there. I gotta hold my strings out of the way for 2 stitches so it gets set into place. There. Okay, when I get close to this piece here, I don't want to run it over with my presser foot and make impressions on it. So I'm going to use another piece of leather to put underneath there and lift it up. So I put my needle down on the leather so that I can lift up the presser foot without moving and getting off rhythm, I would guess. So that helps me get up and right over that piece without ramming into it and making an impression on it. So I get up to the end, and I gotta go this way. I'm gonna set this piece on this side of it so I can come off of it nice. Like that. Then I double stitch, maybe 4 stitches, 5 stitches, That way it's all locked together and that stitch ain't gonna come out. So that side's done. So I'm gonna take you over to the table and we're gonna finish up these stitches on both of these. Hopefully I don't drop my phone again. All right. Ooh, it's starting to come off a little bit. So, just like I did last time, I'm going to flip it over on the back and finish my stitches off on the back so that you don't see how they're finished off on the front. So it kind of helps hide that. So I got to pull the stitching out so that both strings are in the back. Cut them off. This one is where I started the stitch, and it's locked in. I can't pull it out. So what that means is when I put that needle through there, I stabbed right through the string that I started with. So that locks it in on both sides. So all I got to do with that is cut it off. Like, that's why I got these scissors, so I can get really close and cut it off almost flush with the holster without scratching anything or cutting anything I don't want to cut. And I take the lighter and I'm going to make sure that it's all melted down in the front so you can't see it sticking out. And then on the back, I melt one. And what that does is that makes a bead on the back so that stitching will not come out. It makes a really nice hard bead. And you flatten it down, make it all nice and smooth. Then you take your hammer and you see if I can show you. Okay, if you can see how it's kind of rippled a little bit from the sewing machine. So I'm going to use my hammer and tap it down, and it'll flatten everything out and it'll set my stitches down into the groove. Okay, now it's nice and flat. No groove from the sewing machine. The next step with that is now I'm going to wet it so that I can make a bend in this. I got to bend it so that I can glue and stitch the other side. And when you bend it, you make a pocket. So the top piece of leather is bigger than the back piece so that you can bend it and get that nice pocket. So I'm just going to dip it in my pot of water just for a couple seconds to get it nice and wet and loosened up. So what I start with is bend. Right here where this stitch line is, I'm going to bend it up right there. And then put a bend in the top like that. And then bend the edge so that it sits flat when I want to glue it together. So it's going to sit just like that. I'm going to dry some of that water off so that I can glue it. Sorry, I don't know where the camera's at when I'm looking at my project. I gotta glue both sides because it's a contact cement. It'll only stick to itself. It adheres to the leather and then it adheres to itself. I'm gonna let that dry for a minute while I finish the stitches on this one. So again, I'm gonna flip it over to the back and pull the strings through. Put that up. You don't want to see me, you want to see what I'm doing. So you pull the strings through and cut them. This one should be locked because it's the first one I started with, so I'll just cut that down there. Take my lighter and melt the outside. Now I take my hammer and tap it down like I did the other one. So now it's nice and smooth and flat. And this will go on those screw posts when it's all done, and it'll make the belt loops. But we can't do that yet. The next step for this one is to go ahead and fold it and glue it and get it ready to be stitched up. But this one's ready to go together, so we'll do that. So I line up the belt hole, the belt loop hole, and I make sure the edges are nice and flat and the edges are straight and together evenly. There. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute before I put it on the sander. And I put it on the sander and smooth out all the edges like I did this side. Make sure everything's flat and even, because they're a little off. And what I'm going to do is flatten that out and even it, make it look nice and smooth. I'll let that dry for a minute while I get this one ready to glue. I'm going to, it's pretty flexible because I'm using a little bit thinner leather for the inside of the waistband. But I'm going to wet, I usually would wet this holster so that I can get a good bend in that and glue it before I stitch it. So I'm going to wet it. I'll show you how I do that. Right there's my pot of water. I'm just going to put it in there like that. And I don't need to wet the whole thing, just where I need to make the bend. So I bent that, and now I'm going to glue it. Let that dry for just a minute. And then I'm going to go sand this. I don't want to go sand this yet because then that glue will get too dry and it won't stick together. But yeah, if you want to check these out, go to my website, www.blackswampleather.com, and this is go to where it says leather holsters, or you can go on the homepage to where it says inside the waistband. But go to leather holsters, and they're in there. There's outside the waistband and inside the waistband. But this is an inside the waistband retention holster is what this is going to be. That's ready to go together. So I'm going to line up the edges, make sure the edges are nice and straight and lined up the best I can, and hammer that down. Before I sand that one, I'm going to let it dry for a minute. And I'll probably put a weight on it so that it doesn't pull apart. I've got a nice brick of steel. It's really heavy. Just put a weight on that, keep it from coming apart. And then I'm gonna take you over to the sander and show you how I sand the edges on my holsters. Like I said before, it's kind of loud. Alright, I need to plug my phone back in. Okay, so like I did before, I'm going to have to wet the edge so I can bevel it and then slick it down smooth. So just use a wet sponge and wet down the edges, make sure it's really saturated. That makes it a lot easier to bevel, to cut that sharp edge down, bevel it and slick it. Put this on here. Move this over. Okay. So again, I take my beveler. It's a number 2 leather beveler. And cut that sharp edge off. You don't want any sharp edges. You want everything to be nice and rounded and smooth. Okay. Now I've got the edge cut off, so now that I can slick it with my slicking tool, it's a wooden tool designed to slick leather with. And you're going to make that edge look really nice and glassy, really shiny with this slicking tool. And then you're going to edge coat it. Like here it's got the black edge coat. So after you've slicked it and you put the edge coat on, it makes it really nice and smooth and shiny. So that's done. So the next step for that is I got to do my stitching line again. You get my stitch groover and go along the outside, cut my stitching line in. There. So now, just like the other side, I got to paint that because I don't want that to be visible after I stitch it, because then I can't paint it after it's stitched or I'll ruin my stitches. So I paint it now. So just like on this side, you can't see any natural leather in there. It just looks like that you didn't even cut a line into it. So I'm gonna go get my paintbrush and my dye and paint that up. And the color that I used to airbrush the outside, you know, see how the outside is darker? That's Cordovan. So I got to get my Cordovan leather dye, put a little bit in the cap. Then I got to wipe my hands off because I don't want dye getting where I don't want it. You know, always keep your hands clean. Just take a regular paintbrush and paint that edge. Just like that. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute, because you can't stitch it with the wet dye or it'll ruin your stitches. I'm going to put my clean this off my paintbrush. Wipe my hands off again. Now what happens when you put dye on leather is that leather will absorb the dye. And then what's left over on the surface is what you want to buff off, because it's like a dry powder it leaves on the surface. You want to buff that completely off so it doesn't get on your stitches or get places where you don't want it. And it makes it nice and shiny after you buff it off. So just use a clean, soft rag. This is an old washcloth. I'm going to get down in that groove I just painted and get the residual dye out of there. Okay. So I'm going to set this over by my sewing machine and let it dry for a little bit longer before I stitch it. So this one's ready to be sanded. This is going to be the inside the waistband. So I got to sand my edges. Take you back over here. So I'm going to sand these edges flat, and I'm also going to put a nice radius here, round off these sharp edges. I don't want any, straight edges, so I'm going to round these edges off. Now I gotta plug my phone back in so it doesn't die. Sorry. Maybe I'll figure out a better way to do this next time. But now I'm gonna wet that edge again and bevel it and slick it. And my number 2 edge beveler again. I don't know if you can see that. What I'm doing is taking off that sharp edge. Now I'm going to slick it. There. Then I'm going to cut my stitch line in with my stitching groover. Excuse me. Should have left my die over here because now I got to paint that. I'll get my die. Sorry, I never know with the camera that. All right. I'll buff that again like I did the other one. Get all that residual dye out of there and let that set aside for a minute. I've got a holster in my press that I was working on before I I think at the beginning of the video I put it in there. I got to get it out and tool it. Well, mold it and do that by hand with some hand tools. I'll show you. But I'm going to check on it and see if it's ready. I'm going to set this over by my machine. Okay. So over here's my press. Yep, it's ready. So that's what it looks like when it comes out of the press. So now I'm going to put some detail on it, hand mold it, and it'll be ready to put in the dehydrator to dry it out. This leather has to be pretty wet when you mold it, and then after you mold it, you got to put it in the, you got to dry it out. It has to be bone dry. So get all the water out of it before you seal it. So I use a food dehydrator. It's a big industrial food dehydrator, so I can put a lot of stuff in it. But let me show you how I hand tool that, mold that. Get you set up here. Okay. Is that good? Should I lift you up higher? Okay. So what I do, basically use these two tools, and I made these out of nylon. It's a kind of a soft medium plastic, all polished out nice and smooth. So what I'm going to do is go along the edge and put a nice crease outline on this holster. Basically going to give it shape. Like that. Give it a really good definition. And right here's the sight channel. If you can see, it's got a it's molded to have a sight channel so your sights don't get hung up inside there. So I'm going to put that sight channel in. Like that. And then I gotta put a outline shape around the retention point in this holster. So I'm gonna put a nice outline right in here. I don't know if you can see. It's kind of hard because I'm left-handed. Maybe I should put the camera on my left side then. There, like that. I'm going to do the same on the back to give the back some detail. Make a perfect size pocket for the firearm. So it's not going to be loose in there. It's not going to be jiggling around. It's going to be solid, nice, perfectly fitted pocket. Okay. So the front's good. I'm going to leave it like that. And turn around to the back and do the back. Put a piece of foam down so it doesn't, I don't crush anything on the front when I do the back side. That just gives it a nice crease right there for that wing. Mold around the trigger guard. Like that. And make a nice flat spot in here for the screw. This is where the retention screw is going to go. Right in that area there. So that's ready to go in the dehydrator. That's all I'm going to need to do to form that. So I'm going to put it in the dehydrator at like 100, it's about 100 degree for probably 3 or 4 hours. It'll completely dry that out. I'll show you my dehydrator real quick. This is a, I can't really see what I'm doing here. There it is. It's got digital controls up here. I'm going to set it to about 45 Celsius at about 3-4 hours. And on the inside, it's got lots of shelves. I got tons of room in here for whatever I need to put in there. Okay. Put you back down. Set this aside, put this up and put that up. Okay, I take you over to my sewing machine and we'll stitch up those other 2 holsters. Forget these. All right. Like I mentioned before, I'm going to start my stitches on the inside of this belt loop so that when you're wearing it, your belt will actually cover up where the double stitch is at. You know, it'll look nicer. I'll start that around there. You got to hold these 2 for 2 stitches, and I can go. double stitch that about 5 stitches. That way it's nice and locked into place. I'm going to take it back over the table and finish up those stitches. Maybe next time I do one of these lives, I will have my phone fully charged and I won't have to mess with the cord. But not that big a deal. Okay. So on the back side again, I'm going to pull these threads through and finishing them up on the back side. So we got both the threads pulled through the back, and cut them off and leave a little bit sticking up so I can melt them down, and so it left a little bit sticking up. I'll melt them down and it makes a bead that'll keep them stitches locked into place. I'm going to melt this one first, smash it down and make a bead, pull on this other one so that it's nice and tight on the front, pull it some and then meld it. Yeah. There we go. That other one is sticking up just a little bit there. I'm going to melt that down and push it down so it disappears. So now I'm going to tap all around where I stitched, flatten everything out, lock those stitches into place. That holster is ready to be molded. Now I'm going to put this in water, let it sit in the water for maybe 5 minutes, and put the firearm or the molding drone in the holster and put it in my press. So this is for the Glock 48, which is right here, but I don't have the these are the Kydex inserts. It's a Kydex insert that gives you the retention on the inside of the holster. I got to cut and shape that before I can mold this, because I got to mold the leather holster around the Kydex insert. So those are ready to be cut out and shaped on the sander. I can show you how I do that. But my saw is kind of loud, so you have to turn your volume down. Let's see if I can set you up over there so you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, I think that's going to work. So, make sure you don't fall off. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out rounded around the trigger guard, nice and round, and cut off all this excess Kydex that I don't need. Okay, that one's ready to be shaped. I'll shape it all up nice and smooth on the sander. But I'm going to do this one because I got to make 2 holsters for the same gun. Okay, those are ready for the sander. I'll get you turned around. So my sander is right next to my saw and my drill press right there. I'll move my drill out of the way. Get you guys set up here. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna trim up all that stuff with the swivel blade knife. You can trim up some of that plastic that doesn't need to be in there. And then I'm gonna sand it with a sanding wheel on my drill press, smooth it all out. Now that I got a good shape to it. My battery's dying again. I'll unplug that. And plug in. I think I can plug in there. What's this go to? Oh, that goes to my... That goes to my light. Alright, sorry about that. I can't unplug that. So what I'm going to have to do is set you back over here. Sorry. Right there's my drill press where I'm going to be sanding. But I'm going to finish trimming this up so that I can sand it. Okay. what I'm doing there is I'm making, taking all the rough edges down, making a nice smooth edge, and I'm rounding off all the sharp corners. I don't, just like with my leather, I don't want any sharp edges on this at all. So all the edges are going to have to be nice and rounded off. Alright, now I'm going to test these out on my molding drone and check, make sure it's a nice fit. So this will be inside the leather holster, and this will slide in like that, and it'll give it, once you tighten that screw down, it'll give it excellent retention. So this one will go fit in just like that. So now I'm going to take these over the buffer and buff all that off, make a nice, smooth, shiny surface. Don't want any sharp, rough edges on anything at all. So over here's my buffing wheel. Right there. And use a buffing compound. That sun coming in that window is pretty bright. But this is a buffing compound for plastic. Yeah, leave that up. And then take my piece, and every edge is going to have to be nice and smooth and buffed out. Means the inside, because I've sanded up a relief on the inside, there's no sharp edge on there, so I gotta buff that down nice and smooth. Alright, that looks pretty good for that one. A little bit rough out there. Okay. Do a little bit more down here. Alright, put more compound on. And do the second piece. good. It's all done. So, we'll go back over here. Well, actually, while I'm over here, I might as well stitch up this holster that's been sitting here. We'll get back with these in a minute. So, there's the outside the waistband holster that needs to be stitched, or inside the waistband, that's what that's for. Left my scissors over there. Alright, so that's ready to be finished up and then molded. So after I finish these stitches up, it'll be ready to be molded. I'm done with that for now. Get back over here. Okay. Pull the stitches out the back. Cut them off. This one should be locked. This is the first one. Can't pull it out. Pull that through. Take my hammer and flatten it out. Okay. So that's ready to be molded. So I'm going to set that in a pot of water for a couple minutes. Stick the holster in, put it in the press. So both of these are ready to be molded. And these need to be wiped off with a rag because I got residue in there, stuff from the buffing wheels inside there. I'm going to wipe all that out. So I use, here's my cloth, get down inside there, wipe it off. Second piece. Alright, so since I only have one molding drone, I can only mold one holster at a time. No big deal. I'm gonna get a drink coffee. So I'll do this one first. Set it down in the water for just a couple minutes. And like I said, the water is not hot, because if you put your leather in hot water, when you dry it out, it'll be real brittle. So it's just warm water. It's like bath water, unless you take a really hot bath. Definitely not boiling water, just warm. That's probably ready. Wipe my hands off. I'm going to put on a pair of gloves, because when this leather dye gets on your fingers and you get it wet, it will get on everything you touch. So I'm going to put on a pair of gloves to do this part. That way I don't get leather on the nice surface of the holster, ruin it. So now that's nice and pliable. I gotta find my molding drone. Tap it in with a hammer, mallet, not a hammer. It's going to be a really tight fit, and you want a nice tight fit so that it's the gun doesn't, you know, rattle and move around inside there. Okay, so it's in there. You want to make sure that your mag release is not covered on the front of the back. So if your leather covers that mag release, it can accidentally get pushed, and your mag will pop out. And when you need your firearm, you'll get one shot if you carry with a round in the chamber, and then all you got is one shot. You have to tap it before you can take another shot. So that's ready to go in the press. Right, here's my press. I'm just going to use one piece of foam for the bottom. And a thick piece for the top with a thinner piece on top of that. Set this one aside because it's going in next. All right. I need to start working on that pattern for the shield. I got the bottom or the back part already done, so now I need to do the top. Make some room. First, I need to double check my order and make sure that I don't have to do anything special to this before I go any further. Right over there's my laptop where I'm going to check my order. Nope, it's just a regular shield holster. So I'm gonna have to get my light table out so that I can make the top part of this. Make a little room. I'll get you turned around here in a minute so you can see what I'm doing. Okay. I'm going to turn the light off. Like I said before, I've got a video up on pattern making, how I make my patterns. So I'm not going to go through every little detail of what I'm doing here. But I'll just kind of show you how I make a pattern. Tape this one down so it doesn't move around. Get another piece of paper for the top. Okay, so now I'm going to have to tape this into place so it doesn't move on this side. Put a couple pieces here. Take my pencil and I start outlining the bottom part of my holster there. So I'm left-handed. I need to move you to the other side so you're not just watching my hand move around. Okay. Probably can't see very well, but I'm going to outline the belt loop hole and then this side of my holster. All right. So now I'm going to make a crease right there so that I can wrap my paper around my gun a lot easier. Like that. Put my molding drawing back in the right spot. And wrap it around nice and tight. And then mark where this hole is. And this edge. There. Now I can take this out and untape that side. Get rid of that tape and line this side back up. Okay. Now I can finish tracing the other side here. I'm just going to go up to my stitching line because I got to put a little bit of a curve here. I can't make it go straight across. It'll go together funny. I'm going to start with a straight line so I know where I got to go. Now I got to put a little bit of a curve in it. So not much of a curve, just a little teeny bit. Right in the middle of that, I'm going to have to make a point where the top of my curve is going to be. Right about there. Now I need to round this off, make the curve. Clean up my outline. Ready to go. Well, I need to do one more thing. Untape it. And then outline my reinforcement there. There. So now I'm going to mark on here what it is. The shield, right hand, done. Doesn't take very long to make a pattern if you know how to do them. I've done thousands of them. Now I just got to cut it out. All right, got that done. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to end the video and maybe go take a little bit of a lunch. I'm not sure if I'll start another live video today or not, but definitely thank you for watching. And hopefully if this goes over well and people like the lives, I'll do more in the future. So this is my first one. This is number 1. And again, have a good day and thanks for watching.